The FDA just approved flibanserin, which is being trumpeted as the female Viagra. But when you cut through the marketing, it just seems like another big pharma ruse to make a buck. In fact, the company behind it, Sprout Pharmaceuticals, just announced it is being sold to drug giant Valeant for $1 billion in the wake of their groundbreaking approval. Earlier, we spoke with Dr. Leonore Tiefer, Associate Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at the New York University School of Medicine, and author of the book, Sex is Not a Natural Act, which tackles the medicalization of sexuality. We started by playing her this comment from Laura Stryker, Clinical Associate Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, about the little pink pill.
What we know is that women that have this condition, distressing low libido, HSDD, we know that their neurotransmitters are out of balance. So the way that Addyi works is it helps balance those neurotransmitters so that they will have normal sexual thoughts, sexual desires, sexual feelings.
Now, considering the diagnosis of what is now being called hypoactive sexual desire disorder, sort of sets the baseline for this normal sexual desire by what a partner expects or something outside of how the woman actually feels. How is this an evolution in women's sexual health?
Yeah, I think it's a colossal setback. I have to say that Dr. Stryker is engaging in what we call fantasy neuroscience. What she articulates as known is total speculation. We don't have that information about the imbalanced neurotransmitters. We don't know the brain basis of sexual desire. I mean, all of that is total speculation. I think it's entertaining, but certainly not anything I would bank on. The problem with hypoactive sexual desire disorder, as you point out, is that without a clear sense of what is normal desire, you can't have hyperactive sexual desire or hypoactive sexual desire. And normal sexual desire is not a scientific concept. This is subjective, interpersonal, cultural, historical. So I think the diagnosis itself is questionable. And then there are so many problems with the drug.
Right. I mean, people are kind of calling it, you know, it's being touted as the female Viagra, but it doesn't work anything like that. In fact, it's actually, from what I've read and what I've seen, it's just another antidepressant.
Yes, it is just another antidepressant. I mean, that's exactly what it is, except it doesn't seem to work as an antidepressant. But it's not at all clear how it's working, where it's working, what it's doing. All we know is that it didn't work on very many women in the trials, and it didn't work very much on them in the trials. And the differences between Viagra and this drug are legion. I mean, that is the most important point to make to the public, because Viagra has a good reputation. It's a safe and effective drug. You take it an hour before you want to have sex, and if you have erectile problems due to blood flow difficulties, diabetes, or some other drug interaction, it might actually help with the blood flow. It doesn't do anything to desire. It doesn't do anything to self-confidence or pleasure, but it helps with blood flow. And then it's out of your system the next day, and you don't have to worry about what you're eating or drinking. This drug, by comparison, is a brain drug. You have to take it every single day for weeks and months before seeing any effect, and the company wants you to take it for the rest of your life. It doesn't affect blood flow. It doesn't affect peripheral sexual organs. It only affects the brain. It is a major horse of a different color.
Now, what's interesting is that even the score claims a biological lack of desire to have sex negatively impacts 1 in 10 American women. Now, we couldn't find anything to back that up. Is there any science behind that claim?
There's no science, no. The prevalence data, 1 in 10, does come from a survey, a published survey. Published survey was paid for by the company. We don't really have a way to assess the prevalence of sexual desire problems. You know, the definition is already vague and so on. But then the biological basis, that is not demonstrable. Show me the marker. Show me the blood test. Show me the anything. It doesn't exist.
You'd recently said that it's really just, like you said, it's another antidepressant. It doesn't work very well, which always leads me to the question, why is the assumption, and is there any science behind that, that if women don't want to or can't have sex, that it's psychological, while a man suffering from the exact same issue, it seems to be that it's a physical problem? Is there science to support that?
It's not the exact same issue. A man who can't get an erection it's often thought to be physical because it's the penis and the blood flow. But in fact, the research shows that the neurological downflow from the brain to the penis is very important in regulating blood flow. So as a person who's done sex therapy for decades, I can tell you that psychological interpersonal interventions are very effective for men with erectile problems. But women, you know, the assumption that a woman's sexual problem is socio-cultural, I would say, rather than psychological, cultural, I think there's a lot of merit to that because of the pressures that are put on women and the lack of information, the lack of encouragement to be in touch with their own bodies, to assert their own sexual interests. I think that is, we would all agree that female sexual emancipation really has not arrived on a cultural level. So the chances of there being some inhibition, some aversion, some fear from bad experiences in the past or bad body image or lack of knowledge, I think the chances of that are pretty good. And that's why psychosocial interventions are so effective. But they're effective with men, too.
You know, what's interesting is even the SCORE markets itself as a women's rights movement, a way to fight an FDA that is purposely keeping women from drugs that could save them from a sexless life. But that's not entirely genuine. It's paid for by the very pharmaceutical company behind the drug Sprout. Now, should drug companies be allowed to pretend to be activists like this? And what are the ramifications if this is allowed to continue?
You know, I really think I've felt sorry for the FDA throughout 2014 and 2015 as it heard all of these accusations about sexism. The sexism was really ridiculous. I mean, the FDA, if anything, is overly enthusiastic about approving drugs, as witness flibanserin. It's not holding back in order to oppress women. I don't think that makes any sense. But the involvement of Sprout Pharmaceuticals in creating even the SCORE through funding and through public relations companies, and then lobbying Congress and lobbying women's rights organizations, it's shameful. It's outrageous. It's unacceptable. And if this sets a precedent, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, I have to agree, because it's as you were saying, it's women's sexuality has sort of always, throughout history, been regulated in some way by those in power. Who we can have sex with, how we can have sex, when, and ultimately whether or not we enjoy having sex, and even down to now sort of using that in order to, I feel like, sell a product that really isn't what it says, doesn't actually do anything groundbreaking for women, when we should really just be talking about things more and have a little bit more of an open dialogue about this issue. Thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Tiefer. Thank you.
You're welcome.